We're going to look at the gluteus medius muscle. This is the middle-sized gluteal muscle. It lies underneath or deep to the gluteus maximus and superficial to the gluteus minimus. It's sandwiched in between them. Its primary function is it acts as an abductor of the leg. That means that when the gluteus contracts, it will pull your leg away from the midline. Now, as with lots of muscles, this primary function changes depending on what you do. So if you're lying on your back and your gluteus medius muscle contracts, it will pull your leg outwards. That's abduction. If you're standing on your leg, now your leg is fixed, and therefore when the gluteus medius contracts, it will lift up your pelvis. And in particular, it will lift up the far side of your pelvis. Therefore, it is a basic posture muscle. Every time you stand on your leg, the gluteus medius stabilizes your pelvis and stops the other side from drooping down. This is an incredibly important function, and because of this function, which is every time you weight bear, the gluteus medius has to stabilize your pelvis, it is a muscle which is particularly at risk for trigger points. It works with all our usual functions like standing, walking and running. It's constantly being asked to work. Now the anatomy is that the gluteus medius is a fan-shaped muscle. It's quite thick, not as thick as the maximus, but it's a moderately thick muscle. It's a fan-shaped muscle, and it has its origin on the external surface of the ilium. The origin runs from the anterior 3/4 of the, or 3/4 of the iliac crest, where it has this very broad attachment, and part of that attachment involves the overlying aponeurosis, which is a thick fibrous band, part of the major glue that holds your body together. It inserts into both sides of the trochanter of the femur, into the top of the trochanter, and it affects the whole top of the trochanter. It's a huge tendon insertion. We're going to now look at the landmarks of the muscle, and the way you find it is that you need to feel for the crest of the ilium, which is a very big structure, starting here, running around to there, very easily felt. As you slip inside that ridge or below that ridge, you strike initially the gluteus maximus, but deep to that is the gluteus medius. The gluteus medius lies under the maximus only in its back portion. When you come further forward, the medius is in fact lying just below the skin, and you can see that here, you see. So the back portion of the medius is under maximus, but the front portion is actually directly under the skin. It inserts into the trochanter, and this is how you find the trochanter. You feel on the outside of the top of your thigh, and you'll find a bump, and that's the bump that is the trochanter, bony bump. The symptoms that you get are that you have pain, which occurs on walking or on lying on that affected side, or if you're a slumper and you sit back so that your buttock actually presses against wherever you're sitting, you can turn on triggers. So Those are, and you see, walking, sitting, and lying are incredibly basic functions that we have as human beings. And therefore, what is going to turn on triggers is if you go for a long walk, especially if you're walking on soft sand, like on the beach, because there you're working very hard to try and stabilize your pelvis. If you run, if you play a game like tennis or soccer, where you're constantly shifting your weight from one leg to another, it's very easy to turn on a trigger point in your gluteus medius. If you have underlying biomechanical problems, so a difference in leg length, an asymmetry in your pelvis, if you have an abnormal gait, and you have what's called a Morton's foot, where the second toe is extremely long, such that the whole foot tends to pronate exceedingly, all of these are going to add an extra biomechanical stress, which makes the gluteus medius work harder and increase triggers in there. And if you sit and you stick a big fat wallet in your pocket and you sit on that, you may turn on triggers in your gluteus medius. So now we're going to look at each trigger, and there are three main triggers in the gluteus medius. All three triggers occur just underneath the iliac crest, so they're quite high up in the buttock. And the first is towards the back, the second is in the middle, and the third is towards the front. Each one actually has a different area distribution of pain. The one towards the back gives pain probably in the commonest place that occurs in the lower back, which is just, you can see this broad red band which runs from the lumbar spine, and it runs down into the medial buttock and over the top of the crest. The trigger point itself is an incredibly common trigger point. Almost invariably, if you look for it, you will find it in someone who has low back pain. The second trigger causes pain, which is the middle trigger, causes pain in smaller areas over the lateral and the lower buttock. And the third trigger causes which is interesting because it's more towards the front, but it gives you a diffuse pain that runs right across your lower back and the sacrum. So you see that these three triggers give you pain in a very, very common distribution, and treating them may make a really significant difference to many, many people who present with lower back pain.